Our next speaker, Mark McNemar, is a certified orthopedic surgeon, and he's definitely got to experience government intervention in his job. Well, it's quite an honor to be here today. It's great to see all the Ron Paul supporters here. It is true I am a board-certified orthopedic surgeon. I have a fellowship in hand and upper extremity with a microvascular surgeon. Put a lot of fingers back on, and certainly around here we get a lot of that. So, in May 16th of 2004, I took an oath, the Hippocratic Oath, to do no harm. And what really got me interested in politics and the things that we're doing is the fact that the folks who are our elected officials, they take an oath to protect the Constitution. And there is only one person in that entire House that has really stood by for 35 years protecting the rights of the individual from the tyranny of government, and that is Dr. Ron Paul.
You're right.
Our government was set up by the founders back in the late 1700s because they looked in history and they saw that in history the tyrannies of governments that have gone up through the world. They looked back at the writings of Aristotle and Plato, and if you've ever looked at it, this is not something new. This is a cyclical event. And when they saw the tyranny of England, they looked back at that and they based everything that they were doing off of that. And they set up the Constitution as a restraint on the government to protect the individual. And for whatever reason, the people went to sleep. And as we've gone to sleep, our rights are being taken away. And it's at an alarming rate, and it's very recent. The NDAA is an unbelievable step forward into tyranny. And I don't know if anybody's been paying attention, but they have set up a FEMA camp just up I-44 at Fort Leonard. And for the ability for the military to come in and call me a terrorist because I'm up here talking about Dr. Ron Paul, throw me into a prison camp, is now a reality.
That's right.
And so, now more than ever, we have to stand up for our rights as individuals against the machine of Washington. And so I come here today to make sure that everybody here has taken the red pill. And you have all woken up from this daydream of America the Great. Okay? And I want to give you guys some firepower against these people who are the drones, the neocon drones of Romney, Santorum, and Gingrich. First of all is foreign policy. I mean, how many people here, with a show of hands, have been in an argument with a neocon about how awful Ron Paul's foreign policy is? Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, this is sort of his Achilles heel, is what they'll say. But let me give you the history. When you look back at the history, it is absolutely crystal clear that he is correct. In 1948, Iran had just recently been an independent country. They were once sort of a co-op with England. They decided to nationalize their oil fields. Sir Winston Churchill went to Dwight D. Eisenhower and said, look, he said, they're going to start, taking their national resources and, actually using it for the country, which is a bad idea. And Eisenhower came to them and said, okay, Mohammad Mossadegh, the elected prime minister, you are a communist, and we are going to use the CIA and form an uprising as a coup and reinstall the Shah. And that happened in 1953. And when that happened, the oppressive regime of the Shah was used as a focal point against the United States and England, and came to fruition in 1979 when a group of, when the Islamic Revolution happened. A group of students came, overran the The embassy took the 53 hostages. Well, what did we do? We didn't fight them. No, what we did was we went across the border and said, well, look, there's this young, great dictator. His name is Saddam Hussein. And he would love to have Iran's oil fields. And so we're going to support him. I don't know if anybody has seen the news clippings of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein. That's what that was about. And so what we did is we gave them money and weapons to fight the 8-year-long war, Iran-Iraq war. Well, what that did is that absolutely crushed the Iraqi economy because it came out in a stalemate. And so what Iraq had to do is they had to figure out a way to make some money. So what they did is they used American weapons and the American influence and money that we had given them, and they attacked Kuwait. And when they attacked Kuwait in 1990, the UN, Saudi Arabia became scared. They came to the UN drafted a resolution, and the first Persian Gulf War happened. And we kicked them back out, and we left the base there. When we left that base there, the Mujahideen, who became the Taliban, who we also supported in Afghanistan against the Russians, became very offended that we'd have something so close to Mecca. They used that as a focal point, and that's how 9/11 happened. It is very crystal clear in everybody's writings. And so an understanding of history is absolutely critical in trying to turn someone from a neocon to someone who takes the red pill. And so I really implore you to really look at that and go walk through them step by step and say, look, it's not even kind of, our interventionism is not even kind of part of the problem. It is the problem, okay? And we have to get out of there. And the quicker we do that, the better off we're going to be. Another thing is the drug war. How many people have said, well, he just wants drugs? Well, I'm a physician. Trust me, I understand the drug problem. There is not a day that goes by that I don't have somebody coming in asking for pain medicine. Okay, I get it, okay? But let me tell you this. He has two major philosophies on this. One is that you cannot solve a socioeconomic problem with the barrel of a gun, okay? You cannot point a gun at somebody and say, you are not allowed to do drugs. What he says is that you need to go back to the churches, the people, your family, the community, and take these people in and educate them and let them understand. That's number one. Number two is that there's no charter in the Constitution for this. This is a states' rights issue. If California wants to legalize drugs and they have a big problem with the drug problem, let's say everybody starts getting high and nobody does any work. Well, guess what? That's a competition. And the competition, the people are going to leave there. The companies are going to leave there. And they're going to have to address this through a competitive nature, which is what the founders were all about. They really understood this better than anybody today. So, except for Dr. Paul. So, I'm not going to sit here and labor on about this. Your talk was just unbelievable. I mean, my God. I mean, everybody's talk was unbelievable. But I mean, you touched just about every subject that you could possibly imagine. So anyway, I took an oath to Hippocratic oath, and he's taken an oath, and he's the only one who's really stood by it. And I really, we're the Army, so we have to go out. We have to tell people about what Dr. Paul's all about, because the mainstream media certainly won't. And again, I thank you for coming today, and I thank everybody for your talks. It was just wonderful. So, thank you. So now I just want to open it up for questions. Anything I can do? I know this stuff forward, backwards, sideways. So, if you run into issues or things you want to talk about, just fire them at me. Nothing. Everybody does everything?
I'll ask one. I'll play devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
A lot of people can stomach Ron Paul's foreign policy until the subject of Iran comes up.
Okay.
With basically what you call it, a theocracy, a leader that is looking forward to the end of the world, believes that it's his duty to hasten the return of Allah by destroying non-Muslims. Explain to me a little bit of why Ron Paul's foreign policy is better.
Absolutely.
Iran getting a nuclear weapon.
Well, how many people are in Iran? It's about 2 million, 20 million. I can't remember.
77.
I don't
How
know.
many?
77 million.
77 million. There are not 77 million people who want to destroy everyone else. What you look at is before our interventions over there, they actually had about a 70% favorability rating. Now we're down to about 20%. The reason why is our foreign intervention. What people don't understand is the power of the market. Okay, what happens what happens to a country when they get a nuclear weapon? America starts giving them money. America can't sanction them, and that becomes a real problem. So what happens is what we need to do, and what Dr. Paul says we need to do, is we need to lift sanctions. We need to get off their back. We need to say, look, here's the situation. We are going to back away from you. We're going to trade with you. We're going to talk with you, diplomatically slow them down. And what will happen is that the market will take care of itself. When you sanction a country, and this has been proven in history, look at Cuba. When you sanction a country, what you don't bring down their economy. We've been trying to bring down Castro for years, and it's just not possible. It's just not happening. What we do instead is we galvanize the people and actually empower their government. And if you drop your sanctions, you back away from them, you let free trade happen. Look, how many people love your iPods, your iPads? Everybody loves that. The Iranians love that too. They will collapse from the inside out, just like Russia did, through the marketplace and free market economics, not through the barrel of a gun, because all that does is galvanize them behind their people and say, you know what? I think we should have a nuclear weapon. And so, yes, they may have a nuclear weapon. It may be too late. But the people will actually cause that government to collapse. And you will not have a theocracy in Iran if you allow the free market to work.
Can I touch on that also?
Sure. Come up.
A lot of people are taking what Ahmadinejad said out of context when he stated in his dialect that he wanted Israel to be wiped from the face of the planet. His dialect is a hard to understand and hard to translate version of Arabic. And what he actually said was that the regime that runs Israel should be wiped from the pages of history. He's not in agreement with the government that runs Israel. We shouldn't base our national security on what happens to Israel as a country. The Prime Minister of Israel has come out and said a year ago that Israel is an independent and sovereign nation, and they don't need America to back them up. They have their own military, and they don't need our money being pumped into their system. When we go over there and we impose sanctions on other countries, we endanger Israel by doing that, because we are allies with Israel. So every time we impose sanctions on a nation, they have hatred towards us and Israel for those sanctions. So it's a lot, and there's millions and millions of Muslims out there. And if they really wanted to destroy every bit of mankind, we'd be dead already.
Yeah.
There are so many peaceful Muslims. And there's also, I've been in the culture a lot. There's two different types of jihad. Jihad is the Bible or the Quran version of them protesting. There are some that believe in the radical form. That is, everybody should go out and blow themselves up. And that is the absolute radical form. And there are those that believe that, but won't actually act out on it, like their leaders. Then there are those who believe that when an injustice is being done against a religion, then they peacefully protest it. And that is the majority of Muslims. If it was actually in their Quran to do violent acts, then the world as we know it would be over already. They would, it's not that hard to get a hold of the materials to make a dirty bomb. It'd be over already. That's just the way I see it. So.
Yeah, it's in their self-interest.
Exactly. Self-preservation.
I was hoping to add something to that real quick. Just two short things. Back in 1980, whenever we saw that Iraq was building a nuclear reactor, Ronald Reagan was criticized by the neocons because he said, Israel, if you want to go bomb them, he let them do it. And he was criticized by the neoconservative wing of the Republican Party in Congress, but who stood by Ronald Reagan's side? It was Ron Paul. He said, Israel is a sovereign state. They should be able to do what they want, but they should also be able to take the consequences if they do start a land war in the Middle East. And he stood by them, and now they're saying he's against Israel just because he wants to have diplomacy instead of sending our troops over there. If you look at Kennedy, he negotiated the Cuban Missile Crisis, and they had thousands of nuclear weapons against us. And again, going back to Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, he finally opened up relations with Russia and the Soviet Union, and you know, he was actually criticized by Newt Gingrich, of all people, as being like Neville Chamberlain going against Hitler and trying to negotiate and appease the Soviet Empire. Well, what we actually did was open up our culture to them, and even pages of Vogue magazine were going $20 an issue there in the streets of Moscow, where they could barely afford anything in the bread lines. And even Back to the Future VHS bootleg tapes were all the rage over there. So you actually conquer them through the culture, not just at the point of a gun. And that's the best way to resolve issues. If it does come to military issues, Ron Paul was called as one of the greatest military supporters by Ronald Reagan. He's the only one that was actually endorsed by Ronald Reagan out of any of the candidates running right now, because he was one of the first to support Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. And just real quick, I'd like to say that you should really look at the history of how things go down. And if it does go down and they do attack anything, remember there are 25,000 Jews that actually live in Iran, more than any other Arab country in the Middle East. So you need to think about that. In Saudi Arabia, that we give billions of our dollars to, they're a more oppressive regime. They don't even have a single Jew there because you'd be beheaded if you were. And to kind of wrap things up on that, basically just remember that we should have a golden rule policy, but if we do have to go to war, we should fight it, end it, and then come back home instead of propping up bases and dictators.
That's right.
Because we have something called blowback, and Michael Schuer was a former director of the CIA, the Bin Laden unit, for 22 years, and he's endorsing Ron Paul's foreign policy program. So tell them, look at the people in the CIA, look at the military who donate to Ron Paul more than anyone else combined, and you ask them, well, what do you know about foreign policy more than this guy from the CIA or our own troops? What makes you an expert? Just because you watch Fox News? Just follow the money. It's like Watergate. Where are they getting their funds from? Is it propaganda or is it the actual facts? Thank you.
Didn't Israel bomb Iraq's nuclear facility by themselves?
Yes.
Yeah, 1980. In fact,
1980.
Israel has 300 nuclear weapons, so they can turn Iran into glass anytime they want to. And remember, Palestinians live in Israel, so why would they be bombing other Muslims if they're wiping off Israel off the earth? Then what about all those Arabs that are there as well? We'd just bomb Mecca if that ever happened. So it's mutually assured destruction. And Khrushchev during the Soviet Union said he would bury America when he was talking against Kennedy when we finally negotiated that. So let's use negotiation first, and then if we do have to go to war, let's fight it with as much firepower as possible, and then we will be in the eye of the world. We're not starting preemptive wars like empires like Iraq. We actually fight for our republic and our national defense only.
I might also add, piggyback a little bit on what Tim just said. Not only did Israel bomb Iraq, they also took out a supposed chemical or also atomic munitions laboratory in Syria, and that's what they do when they actually feel threatened. They take action, and that's a clear indicator to me that they don't see Iran as a threat. If they did, they would take action. And that's like, they're good at what they do, and they've shown that by taking out threats, you know. And also, another point I'd like to make is that Jerusalem is the third holiest site in the Muslim religion. Why, if Iran was to get a nuclear weapon, do you think they'd bomb their third holiest site? You know, they got really defensive when we showed up close to Mecca. They came in and did 9/11.
And then when the guy says, well, I don't know about that history, you just tell him, look, man, we can't afford it anyway.
And the hijackers, they were all
All
from
from Saudi
Saudi
Arabia.
Arabia, which is a dictatorship, so always remember, you know, just because we give people money doesn't mean they have good intentions for it, and that bad intentions, or the good intentions are the pathway to hell, I think is the way it goes.
All bad legislation starts with good intentions. All right, awesome. Thanks, guys.